Hello, I'm Maggie Lee and welcome to Greener Data Centers, a series dedicated to exploring ways to use technology to make data centers more sustainable. As our appetite for technology gathers pace at work and home, it's estimated that processing demands on data centers are set to more than double in the next 5 years. As ever, there's a price to pay for progress, and in this case, it's not just soaring power consumption and escalated energy costs, but also the harmful impact on the environment. With CO2 emissions from information and communications technology now on the same level as the aviation industry, it's little wonder that power usage and the need for greener computing are capturing boardroom attention. Joining me to discuss why organisations should act are Una Denoy from Capgemini, who consults to Fortune 500 companies, and Phil Andrews, who leads Cisco's European data centre business. Una, if I could start with you, what's the problem, or rather the scale of the problem across Europe, and why should large organisations and managers of data centres care?
I think if you consider that already the use of information technology accounts for about 2% of global carbon emissions, and the power consumption in data centres is growing at a rate of about 15% year on year, you can see that something needs to be done. And also the escalating costs of energy are driving people to think about this not only for environmental reasons, but also for financial ones.
Sure. Phil, from a vendor's experience, is that your read on the situation now?
Very much so. As Una mentioned, the sheer cost of energy now, and also the carbon tax credits, energy is about €1 million a megawatt year, and a typical data center will be 10 to 20 megawatts. So you're looking at some pretty substantial costs, and they're very inefficient at the moment.
And, you know, are national governments waking up to this fact, and are we likely to see regulations or incentives being introduced to force organisations to change what they're doing? Una, what's been your experience?
Absolutely. I mean, already the European Union has started issuing some directives. The big one, the Waste Electrical and Electronic Equipment directive, it's more to do with disposal than with consumption. However, you can see that the appetite exists.
And will that impact across all European countries?
It will, but also at a local level. Local governments have got their own climate change action plans, and if you look at the one for London, they're talking about setting a ceiling on the amount of energy that can be consumed by buildings. And a typical data centre consumes anything between 10 and 20 times the amount of energy that an office usage building does.
Phil, how aware are your customers of this legislation that may be coming, or these regulations?
I think the customers are becoming more and more aware of it, partly because vendors are introducing these issues because we are looking to, as we have to comply to them. There are committees on data center best practice that organizations like Capgemini and others who are in the industry are sitting on these committees helping to share best practice, but it's going to become a really big issue to manage your assets in the most power efficient way. And again, it's part of Cisco and organizations like Capgemini's approach to help customers to get their assets managed efficiently.
And how do organisations like the Green Grid help? And what is the Green Grid? You know.
Well, the Green Grid, it's come up with a number of mechanisms for monitoring and evaluating the usage of power within data centres. One of the things they're sponsoring is something called the Power Usage Efficiency Measure. And that takes the amount of energy a data centre consumes and compares it to how much of that energy is purely going into powering servers. Because there's a big overhead, for example, in terms of cooling. Now, cooling takes up a lot of the energy consumption. However, it's very inefficient in many data centres, and estimates are as high as 60% of cooling energy is wasted. So some of the new technologies emerging from companies like Cisco and others are primarily there to address this issue.
Now, Una, when you go into companies and you're in front of a board, what advice do you give to these boards and CIOs of companies that want to make changes? What's the first step, for instance, they could make?
Well, I think they need to take any initiative around IT and data centres into a into a corporate responsibility programme. not just have it as a standalone initiative, because certain changes that might need to be made, for example, the sharing of infrastructure within different business units, can find some political resistance within organisations, and therefore they will need board-level sponsorship. However, having established that, one of the first steps they can take is to conduct an audit of their data centres to actually see what the extent of the problem is. At Capgemini, we actually had the Carbon Trust, which is a UK government programme, in to have a look at our data centres and give us some advice on what we should be doing. Sure. So that's a very good first step to take.
And Phil, I mean, what other actions are you seeing concerned multinationals taking, aside from doing the audit and getting the advice right in the first place?
I think concerned multinationals are putting together clear strategies. We're no different. We've reduced the number of data centres we have, and we've moved towards virtualization of anything that can be shared, such as storage, such as servers, such as appliances, load balancers, firewalls, etc., and building that into a major program to get asset utilization up. Our standard utilization of servers now is 15 to 1, 15 virtual servers for every real server that we have, and we have it up as high as 50 in some cases. It leads to a huge power saving and also a significant space saving.
And finally, if I could ask you for just two benefits that you think an organisation could immediately reap, what would they be, Una, from your perspective?
Well, obviously benefits in reducing the energy bills, which is significant in most cases. But also having a corporate social responsibility programme is increasingly important. Some of our clients actually ask to see what our corporate sociability programme is, so that they can assess us on that, as well as the other aspects that they assess us.
Sure. And Phil?
A complete concurrence with
reduction in energy costs.
Absolutely, and reduction in space, and also helping on the social responsibility side.
So then, to sum up what I've learned from this debate, that there are real sound empirical kind of commercial reasons for wanting to go down this route to make data centres more sustainable, that there are technologies out there that can help, like virtualization. A good starting place would be to do an audit, to look at what is in front of an organisation, and then to monitor it as you go forward. Una and Phil, thank you very much indeed. In our second episode, we'll be finding out more about the practical changes that can be made in data centres to transform performance. Till then, goodbye.